it.
Yep.
Amir, I wanted to ask you about this and remind people who are watching this hearing that's going on Capitol Hill, result of a couple Democratic members of Congress sending a letter to those that carry networks like Newsmax. I'm talking about Verizon, AT&T, and others, and streaming services, and saying, are you carrying these channels, and if so, why? That's what led to this hearing. And Amir, some would say sounds fairly intimidating.
Well, it is intimidating. I mean, this is what the left does. They intimidate. Most recently, and this doesn't have to do with free speech, but the left was saber-rattling about, and they still are, about packing the Supreme Court. A couple days ago, the Supreme Court rejected a review petition for this election law case out of Pennsylvania. That's a case that should have gone up there, absolutely should have gone up there. And there were 3 dissenters from the denial of cert review. But they denied it because they were intimidated, and they're trying to cow to the left. So it is an effective strategy that the left uses, so why not use it in other spheres? Here's the problem with calling disinformation. Anything that the right says is disinformation. We don't know what disinformation is. It's a dissenting viewpoint. If you might recall recently on MSNBC, you had Anthony Scaramucci in an interview, and he was asked, because he came out and said he's not a fan of Donald Trump. Well, how did you become de-radicalized? I mean, as if he had gone to some Al-Qaeda training camp and had to be reprogrammed. That is how they view anybody who subscribes to a Republican or a typically Republican viewpoint or perspective or supports President Trump. You call them an insurrectionist. You call them a traitor and a seditionist. That is their viewpoint. Anybody who dissents from that is disinformation, pushing disinformation. It needs to be censored. That's the problem.
Okay.
Yeah, and we do want to bring to everyone's attention that the hearing has now wrapped up. This hearing that was taking place to determine whether or not certain conservative platforms and conservative avenues to get information out to folks should be taken off the air, specifically Newsmax being one of them. And if we can just bring this up, can we bring up a portion of the letter that Bob was just speaking of? There were these 2 Democratic congressmen and Congressman Jerry McNerney and Anna Eshoo. This letter to cable operators, it not only took shots at Newsmax, as we mentioned, but conservative media in general. Part of that letter said this, just so folks know. Experts have noted that the right-wing media ecosystem is much more susceptible to disinformation. I believe we have this on a full screen. Disinformation, lies, and half-truths. There you go. 4 right-wing media outlets like Newsmax, One American News, and Fox News all aired misinformation about the November 2020 elections. And then Newsmax, amongst others, has responded. Newsmax saying in response to these accusations, we at Newsmax want to say the House Democrats' attack on free speech and basic First Amendment rights should send chills down the spines of all Americans. Newsmax reported fairly and accurately on allegations and claims made by both sides during the recent election contest. We did not see the same balanced coverage when CNN and MSNBC pushed for years the Russian collusion hoax, airing numerous claims and interviews with Democrat leaders that turned out to be patently false. So as we wrap up this coverage, just want to toss it back to you, Professor Dershowitz, one more time about the response from Newsmax and the letter specifically that started all of this today.
Well, I congratulate Newsmax for standing up against this intimidation. I hope they will continue to, and I hope that none of the cable providers will take seriously the implicit threats in those letters. And if for some terrible reason anybody canceled Newsmax as the result of the letters from the senators, I think there would be a strong First Amendment claim because it would be as the result of intimidation from members of Congress that the cancellation occurred. I think we all hope the cancellation doesn't occur. We all want to be able to listen to the widest array of points of view and reports. And we're the American public. We're smart enough to decide for ourselves. We don't need 2 members of Congress to tell us what the truth is. We can make those decisions.
All right, let's bring in Judd Dunning, author of 13 and a Half Reasons Not to Be a Liberal. And I didn't know if you found the 14th watching today, but I wanted to get your impressions.
Well, look, I wanted to follow up on Dick Morse's Poetry Day and say, mirror, mirror on the wall, don't the Democrats create the most fake news of all? I mean, if we're going to go into art on this, I mean, the thing that was said during this that really threw me today was this statement by one of the witnesses. Many Americans don't understand that they are paying for disinformation when buying cable. Are you kidding me? I mean, this is PolitiFact's new lie of the decade being besides you can keep your doctor. I mean, it's obvious that Americans are smart. And this shows this level of disconnect from our political elites and the average citizen that we're not really representing our American agenda, to put a pander to your show, but a political agenda. I thought that was absolutely the most offensive thing I've heard, with Fox in 90 million homes, Newsmax in 70 million homes, OAN in 35 million homes. I mean, I graduated high school in the 80s. I guess I don't want to tell my age. And I'm in my 50s, and I've never seen an intrusion on free speech. But I think Alan Dershowitz, thank you. You brought it home. I mean, free speech is hate speech. We want our enemies in the open. We have the awareness to make our own decisions. Individual liberty trumps all.
Yeah.
So
Alan,
can you change your book title and say only 12 and a half reasons for not being a liberal? Alan Dershowitz is a good reason for being a liberal.
That's right.
I am a liberal. I wrote a book called The Case for Liberalism in the Age of Extremism. We ought to
We
debate
have the same
someday.
agent.
Your book on liberalism, my book on liberalism. I suspect we agree, if we can agree on what a liberal is. A liberal is one who supports the First Amendment, due process, free speech, all of that. So let's agree on what a liberal is, and then we can agree on whether you should be one.
so Alan, watching these hearings today, where do you think this goes? Because I know you have your finger on the pulse also politically. Is this just a one and done, or do you think there are some legs here?
I hope this is one and done. I hope they just, I think the two congressmen will get a lot of negative pushback if people have watched Newsmax coverage. And I think they will understand that what they did, I hope they will understand what they did really is so un-American. You know, again, I'm put in mind of the House Un-American Activities Committee, which was the most un-American committee in my memory. And now we're seeing another un-American committee trying to put the government in the newsrooms and the editorial rooms of purveyors of information instead of letting the American public make decisions. So I hope it's a one-off and we can get back to having everybody express their views and letting us all decide.
And Amir, about 20 seconds.
I think it's one and done, although I do think the dialogue regarding Section 230 and regarding defamation and perhaps adjusting the malice standard are conversations worth having between both sides. So to the extent that this might help push that dialogue going forward, then perhaps we can take a positive out of it. But again, I agree with the professor that this is a low point in our Congress and in our American history on the First Amendment.
You know, Amir, we've been doing TV so long with you. You actually did that in 20 seconds. So thank you so much. And Alan Dershowitz and Judd Dunning, thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. Coming up,